So here's our agenda for tonight. I've already welcomed you. I'm going to give you a little bit of history and talk about the founder of Black History Month, just so that we're clear on where we're going and how we get there. I'm going to talk a little bit about a timeline of Black history, starting with the beginning that we have information on, why we're focusing on hidden figures in this year, a tribute to one of our hidden figures by one of our colleagues, Crystal Thomas. We're going to talk a little bit about art and literature, music and other ways to celebrate, and then I'm going to give you some information on what's coming next, and we'll have a conversation. So we're going to talk about the significance of Black history, why we celebrate, why it's celebrated here in the States, what it means to us, and why it's important to me in particular. So Black History Month was the product of years of struggle and triumph, pulled together to celebrate the gift of Black people in the midst of challenging circumstances to the United States by Carter G. Woodson. The research to have such a celebration began in September of 1915. The Harvard-trained historian Carter G. Woodson and prominent minister Jesse E. Moreland founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, an organization dedicated to researching and promoting achievements by Black Americans and other Africans of other people of African descent. Carter G. Woodson, an NAACP leader, he was educator and historian, established Black History Week to recognize the central role Blacks played in the development of the nation. The first celebration occurred on February 12th in 1926. The second week of February was set aside for the celebration to coincide with the birthdays of abolitionist Frederick Douglass and President Abraham Lincoln. In 1976, the week was expanded to an entire month, and we have been celebrating Black history ever since then in February. The celebration seeks to honor the contributions that Blacks or African Americans have made to the creation of this country and their sacrifices. Each year, the celebration seeks to expand the knowledge we have about amazing people whose gifts, determination, persistence, and desire to pave the way for a brighter future for the next generation. These men and women, some whose names we know, many who we do not know, are the shoulders on which we stand today. And that is the reason why we celebrate. Let's do a little bit of some historic facts, some that we don't know. So as I look at this timeline, I want to tell you why it's important for me not to start with slave ships, because that's not the whole of the history. That's not where the history begins. And if you start at a deficit, then you always end up playing catch up. And that's not who we are as a people. That's not what we bring to the table in this country. And it's definitely not the contributions that we've made. And so the first African-American child born in America was born in 1621. And he wasn't born enslaved, he was born to indentured servants here in America. In 1773, we get Phyllis Wheatley. She's the first African-American female author. It's really important that we start talking about the things that we've done and contributed well. In 1808, Congress bans the importation of enslaved people to this country. And in 1865, the Civil War ends. The fight between the North and South ceased, but the fight for justice just beginning. Fisk University is the university that offers the first education to Blacks and formerly enslaved people in 1865. And in 1868, the 14th Amendment is ratified and Blacks become citizens. It's important to know that Black men become citizens, not Black women, because women don't have that right yet. Let's move on. Key people in education. Now, why did I choose education? Because we're in the Department of Education, and that's where I wanted to focus. Kelly Miller is one of the first Black men to attend Johns Hopkins University. He's a mathematician and went to graduate school there. He taught at Howard University and served as the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. His key contributions were modernizing his curriculum and tripling enrollment, in the first 4 years of his tenure, using a new pioneered recruitment strategy. Fanny Jackson Chopin didn't know who she was, and there is a university named after her. It was an American educator and missionary. And she was invested in the education of women, particularly higher education for women, and saw it as important to make sure that she helped people to get to where it is that they wanted to go by using their education so that it allowed them to have employment. There was a school named after her, and it's now in Baltimore, and it is now Chopin State University. The next person is Wynton Marsalis. Many of us know who Wynton is. We've enjoyed his music and his contributions. He is an advocate and an educator. And what we have, go back. And what's amazing about him is he is a 9-time Grammy winner, and he's received a Pulitzer Prize in music for his Blood on the Field composition. These are some of the key people. Each week, we will highlight new people to talk about in our speaker series, ones that we don't hear about as often. Each year, we hear about Martin Luther King, we hear about Malcolm, sometimes we hear about Medgar, we hear about Harriet Tubman, and we hear about a number of other people, but there are ones that I think are near and dear to our hearts that most people who don't know their names. Why is this important this year? Why is it important now? In the landscape that we have inherited as leaders, as global leaders, it is really important to understand our history from a very different standpoint and to be able to stand with firmness and assuredness on the shoulders of those that have come before us, and to talk about our contributions and not just what we see in the news that makes many people question our humanity and wonder if we've actually added anything to the landscape of this country. And so we have. We have laid a firm foundation. We have contributed greatly. We've made a difference. We continue to care and pave the way, not just for Blacks and African Americans, but for all Americans to have a better way of being in life. And so each week as we celebrate, that's what I hope that you gain from the time that we spend together. That's what I hope that you hear as our colleagues share their stories, their voices, those hidden figures that speak to them. And as we discuss some of the current events that are going on and how all of this informs the work that we do. And now, if you will join me as we celebrate our Heritage and Black History Month, we pay tribute to generations of those whose commitment to rights and equality for all has proven to be invaluable to society. And now, Shirley Chisholm.
You're muted.
You're muted.
The Honorable Shirley Chisholm thanks you, Madam. I am and always will be a catalyst for change. My record proves this. I'm a woman of first. In 1968, the first Black woman to serve in the US House of Representatives. And in 1972, the first woman to run for president of the United States for a major political party. I fought the good fight during my 14-year tenure in Congress for the rights of women, Native Americans, Haitian refugees, migrant farmers, and the poor. I worked on behalf of Black colleges and took stands on issues including the Vietnam War, compensatory education, and minimum wage for domestic workers. Standing on the belief that service is the rent you pay for the privilege of living here on this earth. I was an early member of the National Organization for Women, and co-founder of the National Women's Political Caucus, a founding member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Let me leave you with this. As you continue on the trajectory of empowerment and liberation of the people, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring yourself a folding chair. And take your rightful seat at the table. You don't make progress by standing on the sidelines, whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas. And we must reject not only the stereotypes that others hold of us, but also the stereotypes that we hold of ourselves. I am the Honorable Shirley Chisholm, unbought and unbossed.
Thank you, Shirley Chisholm, for sharing your wisdom and giving us something to think about making room at the table for others. So how else can we celebrate Black history? Well, there are a variety of different ways. There are writings. We've heard about James Baldwin, but there are a lot of authors. There's Zora Neale Hurston. There is Toni Morrison and so many others. And so if you are interested in getting to know more about what our people have done, dig into the literature. Music, Miles Davis, we talked a little bit about Wynton Marsalis, but a lot of the greats, some of the names that we haven't heard, but it's the music that sets the foundation for the music that we have today. This artwork that is being displayed by Bisa Butler and Kai are part of the Essence art show. And so if you have an opportunity to check out some of the art shows in your community, look at what's going on in the art world. These are just some of the ways in which we can dig into who we are and what we offer, and ways in which we can share what we do and our gifts with the rest of the community that we're in. So, talked about discovering artists and authors and musicians. Learn about important moments in African-American history. And it's not just about the boycotts, and it's not just about the marches, but it's about all the things that go into it. What's the faith background of the people? How did they stay focused when things weren't going well? How did they not give up? Some of these things are amazing nuggets. If you've ever watched Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s series on, African-American history and all of the things that he does, he tells us stories. We are a people of story. And it's important for us not only to know the story, but to tell the story and to keep telling the story so that we don't forget, but more importantly, so that we remain connected. African-American cuisine. I don't know about y'all, but I love to eat. And good food is always at the heart of some of the celebrations when we get together. And so how many of you, just raise your hands, love soul food and enjoy sitting around the table with family and having collard greens and macaroni and cheese? And for those people who, try to be healthier, we have good salads too, but those amazing comfort foods and the stories that go on around those tables and how we share with one another. This is all part of how we celebrate us, and more importantly, how we share with others who we are. Get involved in resisting oppression in all forms. This year, the overarching theme for Black History Month in the country is resistance, Black resistance. And while that's important, what I wanted to do, because this is our second year celebrating Black History Month as a center, was to really begin thinking about those names and our names and how we want our names to go down in history, how we want to make a better space for the generations that are coming behind us as leaders, as global leaders. And so the reason why I decided, and the center decided, to focus on hidden figures is because right now, many of us know each other, and some people may know our names, but many people don't know the contributions we make every single day to the betterment of the world that we've inherited. And so I want to make sure that as we learn about other folks and the work that they've done, that we're willing to champion each other and share our stories with one another, but more importantly, that we will hold and affirm one another in the work that we do beyond Pepperdine. This is our training ground. This is our networking ground, but we have work to do. And so as we celebrate Black history this year, may we think about not just the hidden figures, but may we think about our own work, our own legacy, and what we plan to offer and to give into the community. So in conclusion, I don't know about you, but I used to think about what it would mean to be on, that 100 influential Black people list. When I first started this PhD program, what would it look like? What would my contribution be? Will my life have meaning, and will I have made a difference? And I thought about all the people that came before us who did things that they didn't think anyone would notice, and they weren't doing it for that reason. They were doing it because they saw a need. They were doing it because they believed in the betterment of humanity. They believed that their lives mattered, but more importantly, they believed that their lives mattered to the community. And in order for a community to thrive, we have to take seriously the well-being of all people. And so as we look at some of the faces that show up in the collages, that show up in our celebrations, think about what it is that you want to offer up and how you want to be remembered for the work that you do, and how it will make an indelible mark and imprint for the next generation in the history and the work that we do and we make today. As we begin this Black History Month celebration, my hope, my prayer is that each of you will find someone in your life, in your community, that you can tell your story to, that you can tell about the people who made it possible for you to be who you are today, for you to give thanks and to sit in gratitude for all those who dared to live and to die so that you might live. And really ask the question, how do we make the world a better place through the way in which we celebrate us and the way in which we offer our story in the bigger picture? So let me talk to you a little bit about what's going to happen this month. We've got some amazing keynote speakers coming up. We've got Dr. Kai, Dr. Sean Anderson, our own Dr. Jay Goosby Smith, and Dr. Wyland Wilson. Each one will share from their point of experience, out of their own particular understanding, their own hidden figures. And so I'm hoping that you will join them. These dates will be on the site in Sakai on our center, and you will get information throughout email. And then I want to thank all of my colleagues who have said yes to be part of the Black History Month student panel. I'm so excited to be on these panels with you, to talk with you and to interview you in many ways, just to have this amazing conversation with the students here at GSEP. And so If you did not get a chance to say yes to a panel, it is not too late. Please send your name to my email address. We will make sure you get there on a panel, and each week there's a different theme. Each week you will get more information, but each week the brilliant scholars here at GSEP will share with you, and I'm excited for that. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to invite you to be in dialogue with me around Black History Month, its celebrations, its hidden figures, and how it touches your life and your scholarship tonight. Thoughts? Everybody's all quiet.
I'll get my thoughts.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. When you talked about resistance, everything you talked about was so powerful, and thumbs up to the acting and the performing arts.
Yes.
The beautiful song at the beginning. It just reminded me of how I used to celebrate Black History Month from kindergarten all the way through high school. And somehow in college it stopped. So that was a great and beautiful reminder and session. But when you talked about resistance, you know, I started to think just about how my mother taught me how to resist, and my grandmother taught me how to resist against oppression. It was interesting because it was different ways of how they taught me to resist. And so my mind went there, because there's many different ways that we can resist oppression, but it is important to resist it.
Hey, thank you. Anyone else? Wendy, when you talked about celebrating Black history growing up, and I don't know, many churches would do Black history programs. And I remember doing these Black history programs. And I remember one day saying to my grandmother, do we always have to pick cotton in this play? Do we always have to do that? And it's a reminder that sometimes we get stuck in one part of the history and we miss all the other amazing things. That when we celebrate each year, we have to add some new voices and add some new lenses and invite other people to dig a little deeper with us. Sometimes we have to step into different arenas, and we have to look at the places where we have common ground in community, you know, Black Latino community, there's, you know, a Black Asian community. And I think we forget all these pieces add to this amazing story that Carter G. Woodson wanted to tell. He wanted people to know that we came from very diverse backgrounds, and we didn't just come here in the hulls of slave ships. There were Black people that were free prior to those slave ships getting here, but he wanted Black folks to know how brilliant and how gifted they were. And the importance of what it means to survive in the most ridiculously hard circumstances and have a new generation of people and still be able to do and create. You know, we have this interesting gift of being able to take dirt and chitlins and making it some kind of delicacy. That's not easy, but that's what we've done as a people. And it's really important that we celebrate that. It's really important that not only do we celebrate it, but that we keep sharing the story, and we keep showing the story of greatness and not just we were once enslaved. You know,
I don't know if you're talking to me specifically, but I'll just add to that real quick. I certainly agree. And when I was a little girl as well, during all those plays, of course, I was in theater. And so I had to be in all the plays. And I got to the point where, why do we keep doing the same poems and the same plays and doing the same people? And when I got older, I came to realize that it's so important to tell the story. And it's part of the resistance to keep telling the story, because it's history, and cultures survive by their history, positively survived by their positive history. And I think one part of oppression is that constant erasing of history, or only showing negativity through the media, or only creating narratives that don't fit for everybody or every Black person, or creating narratives that other people pick up and want to put on you as soon as they see you. So it's important to keep telling the history. I recall one time, a quick story, we had a peeping Tom. This is random, but we had a peeping Tom. And my son, he was like 5 years old, maybe 4. And the person was on my roof looking inside at my son. Crazy story. Everything worked out, thank God. But when the police arrived to report this peeping Tom, one of the first questions that they asked my son was he white or was he Black? And my son was just confused and discombobulated. What? Was he white or was he Black? And it was so interesting because I watched my son not understand. He couldn't understand what they were saying or what they were asking him. So we began to describe, was his skin like mommy's or daddy's, or was his skin? And I just had a moment when I thought, wow, what is life going to be like when he realizes, that people look at your skin color and assume different things? And what will life be like if we don't share the history for him so that he could know? So it's such an innocent moment, but it just really reminded me of how important it was for me to share the stories with him and to give him his history.
Yes. I saw another hand up, Crystal.
I did have my hand up. I wanted to talk a little bit about resistance. And Sharletta, your theme was really around hidden figures and who resonates with me the most. Obviously, Shirley Chisholm, but also Harriet Tubman. These women were incredible women who resisted. In today's world, they'd be called the angry Black woman. But the strides that they made and the mountains that they climbed and the progress that resulted from the resistance is why, I guess I should say, why you get to look at me today, although you can't see me because this background don't work. Let me turn it off. But this is why I'm in this program today. Because I see women like the Honorable Shirley Chisholm, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, women who were resistant, who did not accept the status quo, did not do what was popular, but did what was right. And I think that is the message. And that's what I wanted to embody today as I shared with you, is this idea based on ideals that we can be more and we can do more. We don't have to say yes. We don't have to say yes because it's popular. We don't have to say yes because they expect us to say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. No. And that's kind of my key takeaway. I'll stop because I see Sharletta looking at me like, okay, sis, come on now.
No, this is our time. Everyone has an opportunity to share in this space. That's the reason why we set it up like this, because this is where we do some of the creative work that then we get to take into the other places where we are. This is where we can have these difficult conversations or think about things in a different way. And then we get to take them and massage them in our research, in our work, in our communities. I think that that's important. And I think education for Black people is resistance. It has been. So I think that just the fact that so many of us are in this program is part of that pushing back and that resistance of, they didn't think we were smart enough. They didn't think we deserved this. And, we just keep standing and pushing. And so I think that's important. Are there other thoughts? Like, please feel free to share questions.
Hi, good evening. I have a question.
Yes.
So my name's Anthony, and I think this is terrific, by the way. I really enjoyed this evening, and I look forward to the other sessions. I'm the program director for a scholarship program that
Mhm.
actually, it serves high achieving students from primarily low income areas.
Mhm.
And over 50% of our scholars are Black. And so I was curious, if you or the center or anyone here tonight, off the top of your head, like, do you have access to resources or any thoughts or ideas on how might we support our Black scholars, in their development as students, as they, you know, graduate high school and go on to college? Many of them are apprehensive, and I think it
Mhm.
comes from the family unit to
Mhm.
go far away, to go
Mhm.
far from home. So we have a lot of our students who stay local, and that's
Mhm.
actually a problem I'm looking into more. We're trying to host workshops and sessions to make parents feel more comfortable about the idea of going away.
Mhm.
But I'm curious if the center or this group tonight have any thoughts on how we can support our scholars.
I have thoughts.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure everyone else, if there's anyone else that wants to say anything, that they have an opportunity to. Right now, I don't think the center has anything that we've been working on. We're working on other things. But what I will say is, what area are you in? What part of the country are you
In Los Angeles.
in? Okay,
So
you're in Los Angeles.
we have 6 partner schools. One's in
Mhm.
Inglewood, one's
Mhm.
in Downey. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the LA area, but they're kind of all over the place throughout Los
Mhm.
Angeles.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the thing that I think is so important when you're working with young people and families, particularly families that are low income or what we consider disadvantaged, is relationship. Building relationship is so important. Building trust, creating a space that's safe and a space for belonging. Because when they have at least one space where they feel safe, one space where they can come and get what they need and to be supported, that's helpful when there are other places that are not. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, what community organizations that are African American based are you partnering with for that mentor mentee support? Like, your local chapter of the NAACP. I don't know what it's like, but what are they doing? How can they support you? What other organizations do you have around you that can be of assistance? Again, networking and relationship building is really key. And to be very honest, there are a lot of kids who don't want to go that far away from home, and that's okay. It's helping them find their why and being excited about it, um, and figuring out how to do that. Sometimes the best thing to do if your environment at home is not totally crazy, is to stay home, save some money, and do the thing that you can, and then move away. But I think that that's real for a lot of young people. Is they've never been away, they don't know anything else, and I think people that tend to go away have had really good support and know that they have a safety net to fall back on. That's just my experience. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm sure that there are some other amazing thoughts on this from my colleagues here.
So since I'm co-presenter on this panel today, I'll jump in here. So Anthony, I have a couple questions for you, but then I also have ideas. I just want to kind of provide context for my ideas. Number one, you mentioned that you guys provide scholarships for low income families. Do you provide full scholarships, partial scholarships? Do you provide scholarships for particular fields of study? So give me a little bit more meat around that.
Yeah. So the program, it's based at 6 private schools throughout Los Angeles. And so it gives these students the opportunity to attend these high schools with the 75% tuition scholarship. And then they also receive a $2,000 stipend that they can use for college and career exploration and interest. And so we have a lot of students who use it to go, visit colleges, or they'll go to a summer conference. So it's not subject specific. It's open-ended to all students. So we have lots of students involved in sports. visual performing arts, you name it. So I don't know if that answers, but yeah.
It does. No, thank you. Because and so two things, well, probably more than that, but I actually advocate. Well, I'm curious first, what, if any, programs do you have for scholars that are disabled? Sorry, I'm going to start a campaign, or probably I'm a scholar now. I'm going to write a paper on it's going to be titled "Don't Diss Me." Because when you think about dissing, I don't like disabled. I like differently abled. When you think about diss, it's a negative connotation. So what, if any, scholarships or stipends do you all provide for those students, those scholars that are differently abled, that learn differently, that perhaps have limitations beyond low income? That's number one. But before you answer that, I'd like to offer the answer to your question. What ideas? I think partnerships with corporations are a really good place to start, but also partnerships with what we call in my circle, the Divine Nine. So Black Greek letter sororities and fraternities. We target Black students, not just Black students of low income, but it includes Black students of low income. And there are often opportunities for you to reach students that you may not reach because these organizations are already partnered or already have a pulse on that stakeholder group, if that makes sense. And then I used to live in California. Well, I still live in California, but I'm in Arizona right now. Raytheon. I'm familiar with Inglewood. In fact, the Inglewood alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta is my chapter. We do a lot with the Inglewood School District. Raytheon does a lot, the Black Employees Network. They do a lot with going to school and providing not just scholarships, but a path to scholarships outside of what you can offer, because we work on building intellectual capacity such that you can get a whole bunch of scholarships. And so those are just a couple of things that came to mind outside of the center and Pepperdine University, but really tapping into student organizations that have a passion for students and mentoring and tutoring. Those things help build confidence. They do help build intellectual capacity as well. And they can also help fund. You might get somebody who say, you know what, I want to give you a scholarship to give to a student. And that might also be another way of revenue generation. So I'll hand it back to you to answer my question about differently abled scholars.
Yeah, and we actually do use the word differently abled. So I appreciate your words on that. So we do have scholars who are differently abled. It's a very small program. It's geared mainly towards the high achieving ones though. So, as long as they score a certain score and they're holistically reviewed, through interview and through recommendation letters and so forth. It's not just based on one thing. So we actually have a girl from the Inglewood area, and we helped her get a full ride to Yale. And so she's there now. And I remember her mom came up to me at graduation and she was like, "You're taking my baby away. I can't believe it." All this stuff. But then she started off mad and I was like, "Oh no." And then she came around and she was like, "But thank you, because never would I have ever imagined this would happen."
And that's what I was going to say. And I forgot, but I actually advocate for students going away. I know it's not expensive, but if we're offering scholarships, maybe that's like a little extra nudge, because the experiences that you get outside of home, while we might feel comfortable and cozy in our homes with our moms and our dads and our cousins, the experiences and the maturity level that's built from going away, if you can sustain it through scholarship, I think we should really nudge more students towards going away where it's funded through other sources.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
All right. So are there other thoughts or questions on the floor? Thank you, Anthony. We put some information in the chat for you. So Wendy.
Yeah, just very quickly, I just kind of wanted to add my 2 cents to what you and Crystal mentioned, which was so great. For Anthony, I certainly grew up in a low economic status situation in Detroit, Michigan, in a very, there are a lot of parts of Detroit, Michigan that are very beautiful, as Crystal would know, because Crystal's from Detroit. And then there's some parts that are not as beautiful, and it's a lot of crime, and it's a lot of challenge. And I happened to grow up in that type of environment, and it was very scary. It was very scary. And so when it was time to go to college, I recall a lot, well, the people that were going to college with me, we all had the fear of leaving home, as many college students, as many rising college students would have, from seniors to college. Although the variables today could be different with school shootings and COVID and just, people cocooning and students staying home and understanding how to cocoon at home might be variables. I think that even way back in my day, when those weren't variables, I was still nervous. And because I was in a crime-ridden neighborhood, I was nervous because I didn't want to leave my mom, because I didn't want anything to happen to her, and I felt like I could protect her. I remember another young man was nervous. He was from a single mom family. He didn't want to leave his mom because he thought something would happen to her. I didn't want to leave my siblings because I thought something would happen to them. And there was a community that I didn't want to leave because I felt very protective over people in the community at large. How I got that way, I don't know, but I just felt like I don't want to leave it. So what helped me is I had a teacher who really helped me to understand that I was making an investment, that I can make this investment when I go away, that I can come home and help to get my family out of that situation. And then the power of the handoff. So I had a teacher and I got a scholarship, and there were groups and there were great people around like you who thought that I would do great things, and I got some support that way. But I was handed off to a group in the school that I went to other people like you, Anthony, and to a support system that was already embedded in that particular school. So as what Sharletta said and Crystal said about the support system, if there was a bridge that was made to Yale or to other schools that you are sending them to, that there would be a support system right there. I happen to have 2 psychologists who were psychology professors who created a support system for African-American students from low-income families. So I think that handoff is important because they helped me initially in my freshman and sophomore year to stay when I really wanted to go back, because I was always so afraid of what could happen at home. So maybe take a survey and to see what the students' fears are. Mm-hmm. And then you can speak to those fears with the action to help them overcome.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all so much.
You're welcome. It will always be important as you think about the next generation, how to connect them to 2 important pieces of the puzzle: resources with people who look like them and can support them, and the other resources that can support them in the other arenas. And so it's always helpful to figure out, like, I come out of the science world. So there was a National Society of Black Engineers, there's a Society of Black Biologists. When you start thinking about particular areas that these children are going toward, as far as like areas of study, there will probably be a group of professional Black people who have an organization that you can tap into to get them connected and to get some resources. It's always important when you think about, as Wendy said, where they're going, to see what kind of community they have there that's connected. Alumni chapters everywhere for schools generally have a Black caucus at some level that you can always tap into. And so make sure that you utilize those connections. That's just as important as anything else. Are there any other thoughts? We've had a lot going on in the world that impacts where we are this Black History Month. And we've talked about resistance. But one of the things I want to make sure that we talk about is emotional safety. In the midst of our celebration, in the midst of all that's going on, in the midst of realizing that there are great things that go on, we also have to realize that in the times that we're in, there's a lot of trauma. And we get re-traumatized with 24-hour news cycles. And so how do we, in places where we're working with Black students, African-American students, where we are Black people who struggle in the space of safety, even as we're celebrating, the reality is that we've just watched another young man lose his life, not because of anything other than fear. And a white nationalist framework, white supremacist framework. And it doesn't matter that these men were Black. That framework is the reality that we live with every single day. And if we tell the truth, many of us have been taught to hate who we are and not understand that and not know how deeply entrenched it is. And so I want us to make sure that as we're thinking about the greats and the hidden figures, that we also think about the trauma that they went through and the ways in which we don't get re-traumatized, and how we take care of ourselves as we keep telling the story. So are there thoughts tonight as we think about that? So I want to share two things. The first one is I just got this book called, it's about NAP ministries, Rest as Resistance. And it's really important that we rest. And I know that with school and work and family and all the things that we have to do, sometimes rest is the last thing that we do, but use rest as a means of resistance. And then because Pepperdine is a Christian institution and many of us are people of faith, Sabbath as resistance and keeping Sabbath practices. And so whatever those look like, whether it's meditation, whether it's prayer, whether it's walking, whether it's journaling, being gentle with ourselves and maintaining those practices, I think will be really good as we celebrate this Black History Month, as part of resisting the trauma and as part of remembering that there are so many people whose trauma allows us to be here today. And so are there other thoughts on that before we begin to wrap up?
Can I just jump in here for a minute?
Yes, yes.
So first and foremost, I want to thank you all for being here and supporting us and the center in all we do. A couple points tonight resonated just because for those of you that know me, you know I live in the space of appreciative inquiry. You know, I'm as a woman of color, I know we have problems. I know that problems exist in the world. And oftentimes we lose sight of who we want to be, of where we want to go and what that journey looks like, because we're so caught up in this space. And so to Sharletta's point, the systemic oppression that exists within our own society doesn't define us, right? So how do we overcome that? How do we get to where we were intended to go, to where we were intended to be? And for me, that's the part that resonates. Sharletta, I commend you for taking the history of the Black community further than just slavery, because a lot of times we start there and that is so limiting. there's so much more. There's so much greatness in this community, well beyond what slavery defines. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to share. I'm very touched by a lot of this. The Honorable Shirley Chisholm, amazing work. And so really, I just, I don't know how to convey that strength that I see in the community and in our presentation. So I just wanted to say that much.
Thank you, Dr. Gabby. I want to thank each of you for taking time out of your evening to be with us tonight. I know that there are so many other places that you could be, and yet you chose to spend a little bit of time with us as we kick off this celebration. I will see many of you again next week as we start our student panels and we have our speakers. And so I'm so excited. Bring your questions, bring your thoughts, bring all of who you are, because I am because we are. As I would say to my congregations when I was serving in the local church, there is only one you. And I need you to show up fully, because I can't be who I need to be without you being who you are. There's a song that only you can sing, and you need to sing it because somebody needs to hear it. There's a story that only you can tell, and you need to tell that story and keep telling it because someone needs to hear it. There is something in you that the world needs, and the divine saw fit to give it to you to share with the world. Do it with purpose, do it with grace, do it with joy. Do you, because you are loved, and someone needs to know that by you showing up and loving them. So tonight, may you find rest for your body, your mind, and your soul. May you find peace in the midst of the storms, and may you find sweet grace and love surrounding you, because you were created with a purpose and the world needs you. Thank you. Have an amazing night. We look forward to seeing you next week.